Hello, welcome to Web of Stories. My name is Melinda. It is Wednesday and we spend our Wednesdays with Will, usually, which is part of my sort of ongoing Shakespeare project to reread or read all of Shakespeare's plays. Each month I choose a play out of my coronation tin, which is just out of reach over there. And this month's, July's, was The Merchant of Venice, and I've read it and I have thoughts. But before I get into that, I have two sort of catch-up things. One is I just forgot to mention this in my mid-month book bash vlog yesterday, and I thought I need to do that. It has nothing to do with Shakespeare. Well, it could have something to do with Shakespeare because you could use it for Shakespeare. But Libro FM is having a reading challenge. It starts today as I'm filming this, which is July 16th through July 26th. But you don't have to, I mean, if you see this on July 17th, that's fine, it's okay. And basically you track your hours of audiobook listening. It does not have to be on Libro FM. You could do Libby, you could do whatever, but audiobook listening. And then if you participate, you get a free Libro credit. And you don't even have to have a Libro membership to even do that. But you do get, all participants get a free Libro credit. And then if you get, there's like a bronze, silver, gold level. And it's like 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 or something. I can't remember exactly what the breakdown is. I just know I'm not getting gold, but I'm working for bronze. Then you're entered into a drawing for another prize. All you have to do is download this sheet, and I will link the website for it below. I don't know if this helps you, but there's a little thing there. There you go. I'll link the website below, and you can get this and download it and print it off and fill it out. And then before July 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern, you just have to upload it to the address that's given. That's all you have to do. And I'm all for a free Libro credit. You know, I cannot pass up a challenge with a possible prize. I just can't. Second thing that has nothing to do with The Merchant of Venice, but does have to do with Shakespeare. I finally finished watching a performance of last month's play, which was Love's Labour's Lost. As if you missed the earlier videos, like I started watching one that was like, I don't know what company was doing it, but it was like set in Elizabethan times, but like everyone had American accents, which was weird for me. It just wasn't working. So then I joined Marquee streaming because the first one was from Broadway HD. So now I have Marquee streaming as well. Not plus, but as well. And they have a lot of the RSC productions. So the one I watched was from 2014 and it's set like right before World War I. It's a beautiful production, like just beautiful to look at. And of course it's the RSC, so the performances are absolutely amazing. I will say that, oh, my little pin is sideways. You know, you guys see my pin. I will say, as I suspected, the bulk of the humor was physical humor, which is fine. But I'm saying that's why I think, especially now, because I think the problem with Love's Labour's Lost is a lot of the wordplay, or would have been hilarious in the late 16th century, is like not something that we get anymore. So I think that the key to this is to see a good production that hams up the physical humor, because there's a lot of that in there. And it was, I mean, the performances were great. I enjoyed it. Still not my favorite Shakespeare play though, just because it's kind of like, yeah, you know, it's not bad. It's not A Winter's Tale, but it's not great. But anyway, let's talk about The Merchant of Venice. And there is so much to say. So let me start with the good. So a summary of this play is there's this guy named Bassanio who wants to go woo this woman named Portia, who's like got this weird courtship thing where there's like, this is very fairy tale-ish. There's 3 chests and you have to choose the right one. And if you get the one that has her picture on it, then you get to marry her. And like, if you don't, then you have to like, I think never marry. It's very weird. Now, anyone who has seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade would figure this out really easily, but you know, that's a couple hundred years down the road from this. So Antonio is a successful merchant. So he says, well, I don't have the money on me, but I can forward you money because he's a really good friend. He wants to support his friend. And I can support you. So they're going to go to a money lender named Shylock, who is Jewish. And Shylock, they do this thing that, you know, these 3 ships that Antonio has, he's going to get a slice of, he's going to get repaid from the money from the ship. And if not, he gets a pound of flesh. That's where that came from. I did not realize that came from here. There's another in here. There's a bunch of very famous lines in here, I will say. All that glistens, or this one says, all that glistens is not gold, but all that glitters is not gold. So he says, no, it's not gonna be a problem. These ships are gonna come in. It's gonna be great. So they get it. Bassanio goes up, he woos Portia. Woo-hoo-hoo. They have nice little speeches to each other. Bassanio's friend like hooks up with Portia's maid. It's all good. Now, problem is there's something happens to Antonio's ships. And so now he is not able to pay back his debt to Shylock. And so Shylock wants his forfeit, which is a pound of flesh, which is, I did not realize until I got to this point, a literal pound of flesh. Like, I thought it was just the thing you say, or a pound of flesh. No, it is a literal, take a knife, cut out pound of flesh. And Bassanio's like, no, because I've married this rich woman. I can pay you like 3 times as much. He's like, nope, I only want this money if it comes from this ship. And that's it. And so Shylock's going, I'm going to take it to the Duke to decide, because there is a law. I mean, this is kind of the law. And the Duke's like, dude, come on, you gotta, let's be realistic. You're not gonna cut a pound of flesh off this guy. And he's like, yes, I am. And so there's this big trial. And even though Bassanio's there offering Shylock even more money, Shylock is no. Shylock, by the way, side plot, is a little pissed because his daughter ran off with someone, his daughter Jessica. So meanwhile, Portia, the rich lady with the chests, and her maid Nerissa have dressed up like men because it's Shakespeare. You know, he's a good cross-dressing thing. And they go down to Venice to this thing, and they're posing as these lawyers. And Portia poses as a lawyer, Nerissa poses as a clerk. And somehow she is seen as this like law genius. So they come and she's like, oh yeah, you have to get it. But it only says, like, are you sure you don't want to give mercy? No, I'm not giving mercy. And she says to Shylock, okay, you get your pound of flesh, but it doesn't say blood. So you can't get your flesh without getting blood. And if we see any blood, then you forfeit and we take all of your fortune. And it becomes a whole thing. And finally Shylock backs off and everyone's happy and lives happily ever after again. I've left out some minor details, but that's fine. That's the play. Now, what I liked about this play, I think the story is actually, the main lines of the story are really interesting. And Michael Clark said in our Discord, join my Discord to discuss this with us, that is very fairy tale-ish. And that's exactly what it is with the whole thing with it, well, or Indiana Jones, with the chests and everything. And it is a kind of right versus wrong story, which fairy tales are. There's always like a moral with a fairy tale. And this one is, you should have mercy and you should, all these sorts of things. Language-wise, I very easy to follow. Of all the plays that I have read, which is I lost my pen. Sorry, just remember to vote. All the plays that I have read, include like in this project plus in school ever, this is by far the easiest one I've had to read, as far as understanding it and what's going on. I did listen to it as I usually do while I read it because I didn't know, but I wouldn't have needed to. Although I highly recommend it because the production I saw was like well-known actors, or the production I listened to was well-known actors. Bill Nighy is, I think Bill Nighy in the one I listened to was Antonio. Anyway, so it's, as I said, there's lots of lines in here, it's easy to follow the story. It's an interesting story. The whole sort of resolution with like the trick about the flesh versus the blood is really smart. Even the side characters are kind of interesting. It does have the clown. I will admit the Shakespearean clown is not my favorite element of Shakespeare, but he was a lot more palatable in this than he was in some of the other ones we've seen. Or read. Or I've seen them, but read them. So all of that. What I didn't like, so anti-Semitic. Not a surprise. I knew going into this was wildly anti-Semitic. I did not realize the extent of the anti-Semitism. So if you follow this channel, I read a lot of Agatha Christie. And Agatha Christie has her anti-Semitism issues. But with her, it's like, why did you use that word? You could have used a different word. You didn't need to say that. Like, it's like, what were you thinking? And it's also, her plots her plots don't focus around anti-Semitism. In this case, that is the plot. The anti-Semitism is so woven into this. So, I mean, Shylock, the character Shylock, his name is now an anti-Semitic slur. That is how bad this is. It's like Shylock, it's like what everyone says about Shylock, it's what Shylock says about everyone else. It's the idea that he's a Jew and the other, that's all kind of in with this plot. So it is, you can't get around it. There's no way you can get around it. Now, Bookish Best Friend told me that some productions, I thought she said the last act, but it's not the last act. It's like the second to last act. They don't do it. But then I don't know how you do the play, because that's where everything happens. I don't know. But anyway, I am actually going to be, I have not watched a performance of this, but I am going to be really interested to see a performance of this, to see how this goes. And I have access to a couple. Now, this brings up this whole thing with, well, you know, that's the way it was then. I hear this a lot whenever something historically, like we thought something wrong in history. Well, we're just going to forgive it because that's how they thought. I remember telling someone about when I was an adult and rereading the Little House books to my daughter and being completely shocked at the racism in it. And they're like, well, that's the way people thought then. That's true, but that's also not an excuse. And with the, I mean, it's important to I do think it's very important to look at this and realize this is what people thought then. And that's not a good thing, because make a long story short, Hitler didn't just wake up one day and decide to be anti-Semitic. And this is not at all to excuse Hitler. Hitler was a horrible person, but I'm just saying it was centuries of anti-Semitism that led up to the Holocaust. And it's still with us. I mean, religiosism, anti-Semitism, because I think anti-Semitism only is against the Jewish faith, but you know, we have Islamophobia too. There's so, I mean, this centuries of this, and this is a proof that it is centuries. This was written in, I think, 1596, and it is dripping with it. And if you know anything about medieval history, my degrees in medieval history, like, this is a drop in the bucket to what was going on. So I think to like read this and say, oh, well, that's just the way they thought at the time, and excuse it is very dangerous. I think you need to say that's what they thought at the time and recognize it, but you still need to be critical of it, because if you start excusing these long-held thought patterns, you're allowing the long-held thought patterns to continue. And the fact is, to this, I mean, there was the Holocaust, which was absolutely horrible. And one would think the Holocaust would be the end of anti-Semitism. Like, I would think that would be so bad that that would be the end of anti-Semitism, but it is not. It just isn't. And it isn't the end of like religious phobias and things like this. It isn't. So it is very important to look at this and say, yeah, that is anti-Semitic, and no, that was not okay. Now, I never read this in school. I know Angelia said that she read it in school. I think my friend Karen said she read it in school. I never read this in school. It was never offered as an option. And I wonder, like, on one hand, because it is such an easy play to follow and it is so smoothly written and so many of the lines are well known, it would make it would be easy to teach in high school. But I also feel that the subject matter makes it hard to teach in an English class when you are looking at Shakespeare as a Shakespearean writer and what he does. Now, if you wanted to look at it in a history class and anti-Semitism through the ages, perfect place for it. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be taught. I'm saying it should be taught with care. So yeah, that's where I am with this. My rankings, you know, I usually do the rankings after I've seen the performance, and that's like my last, I sort of close out the month with my rankings, but I'm actually going to do my rankings now because I think this feeds into everything and it kind of shows what I mean. So for those of you new, I have a method. I have certain things that I give this points for, 1 to 5, and then I get a total, a subtotal. And then I have another category, which is of its time. So things that don't age well. And there's another one and that gets erased from the total. So let me go through this. I gave this an A, so 4 stars. I honestly kind of feel like this should be an A+. It's just in my rating. I don't feel like because of the anti-Semitism, I should give it an A+, but I'm thinking on here I might even change it to a 4.5, which would be an A+. Actually, I am going to do that because even though that on my ratings it's going to show 4 stars, my rating here is going to be 4.5 because I addressed the anti-Semitism later in my ratings. Okay. Reputation. This is a very, I mean, people know The Merchant of Venice is a Shakespearean play. I would say it's probably not quite as well known as Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet or Macbeth. Like, I think that those are the 3 that are going to get 5 points out of this one. Maybe A Midsummer Night's Dream as well. Maybe Richard III might. But maybe Henry, I don't know. We'll get to those places when we get to them. But this is definitely a biggie. Like, if you ask someone on the street, name a Shakespearean play, this might be one they come up with. Probably more likely they'll come up with Hamlet, but whatever. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Ease. 4.5 stars. As I said, this was incredibly easy to follow. And I think that relies on it. The language, it relies on Shakespeare not relying so much on wordplay as he did in other plays such as Love's Labour's Lost, where so much is built into the wordplay, but 400 or 500 years later, almost 450 years later, 400, whatever, you're like, that wordplay doesn't work anymore. So we've lost that. That's not here. This is a pretty straightforward telling. Characters, I did give this a 3. Portia is kind of a standout character to me as sort of a badass woman. Shylock stands out because of what he is. The other characters are kind of, they're there. They have their monologues, they're fine, but they're nothing that really stands out. So I gave this a 3. For the poetry, even though it doesn't rely on wordplay, the language is just still beautiful. So I gave it a 4. And would I see this? Okay, so would I see this? 5 is I will travel to see a production. 1 is you could not pay me to see it. I gave this as a 4. Like, if there's a production, like, I am hoping that a production comes nearby so I can go see it, but I'm not going to, like, New York to see a production. If that makes any sense. Although I'm really curious. That might change after I watch one of the recorded productions. And that brings my total to 24.5, which actually at that point would put it into first place. That would put it above Henry IV Part 1 and put it into first place. But then in the of its time, this one is 5. I can't give it anything less than 5 because of the anti-Semitism, which brings it down to a 19.5, which puts it in 5th place. It went from first place to 5th place just because of the anti-Semitism, because of that of its time element that we have to recognize and we cannot excuse. So there you go. My rankings as of now are in 6th place, The Winter's Tale. I will be surprised if anything comes below Winter's Tale. Then we have in 5th place, Love's Labour's Lost. 4th place, Merchant of Venice. We have a tie for 2nd place between Coriolanus and The Merry Wives of Windsor. Again, that does not feel right to me. December, I will do sort of a re-ranking, or I will do a revisit of the rankings and see if there's anything I need to kind of change. And then number 1 would be Henry IV Part 1. So there you go. That's my first video on The Merchant of Venice. I will be back after I watch a production of it. And I also have at least 1 short story retelling of it that I'll be reading. My goal was always to along with this read some kind of retelling. In some of the plays, that's just not possible. I just couldn't find one. But I have read them for Coriolanus and The Winter's Tale. Those are the only 2 I have. But I know I have one for The Merchant of Venice. I have a short story collection by Dahlia Adler that Mariandria at Books and Bocadillos had told me about. So there's one in there that I will read. And I'm sure there's other ones too. But I will come back towards the end of the month with another little, let's wrap up The Merchant of Venice. And if I have enticed you to read it, or if you've read it and you want to discuss it, please join my Discord down below, and directions are down below. There's a thread on there called The Bard Room, and that's where we're discussing it. So anyway, thank you very much. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.